and good day or good time zone to everyone. Welcome back to Crossing Latitudes 2024 Fireside Chat, or our, like they say, daily streams with guests and overall updates from the stream. From the jam and all what's happening. We have quite exciting stuff going on for the past 2 days and 2 more days to go, at least from the Finnish time zone, but as well in Brazil, because that's why we have longer jam period and longer submission period due to time zones, and making sure that no stress or pressure happens to any of the teams, as we have mixed teams this jam, with even participants outside of Brazil and Finland, meaning it's cross-culture exchange, and we have even some participants from African continent, from the rest of Europe, from North America, and so on. So welcome aboard. Amazing to have you. And now today with me is Jonathan Medina, who is a fellow colleague from the games industry. And yeah, Jonathan, welcome back. We had a bit of a pre-jam discussion as well, but so wonderful to have you here, especially, for more detailed discussion. How are you this fine morning?
Oh, thank you, Natasha. It's very nice to participate, and I'm very good. Hopefully, enjoying the very sunny weather here in Finland. So
For once, yeah.
looks promising. Yeah,
Especially
took too long this year. Yeah.
yes. But also it's really weird that it got also immediately super hot, which is not usual for Finland, as you know. So this sort of like we are very having this, or we are sharing also with Brazil a bit of this sort of like, oh, the weather. Okay. This is because last year we had this jam in August, and of course it was completely different. End of August,
Right.
completely different kind of shift of things happening, at least in Finnish weather. But yeah, so Jonathan, please introduce yourself.
All right. So, long story short, so I have graduated in game design in Brazil, and one of my very first jobs was to actually use the video games technology for purposes that were not necessarily only for games, So I would develop like interactive media content, exhibition content, educational products, and such. And over those years, I have been kind of growing into more the XR industry. So I have been developing.
Let's explain that a bit.
Yes,
So what is XR, especially for the audience outside of the game dev? Just like let's
sure.
touch a bit about that as well.
Yeah. So I like to define the XR also as this cross-media industry, or these cross-media solutions, So it's basically using the interactive technology for different purposes, for different kind of products or different type of platforms and such, So you're not necessarily locked into only the video game console or only the PC, Like you do things for VR, AR, mobile, or even the web browser, depending on the interactivity level there of this.
Yes. So virtual reality compared to and also this mixed reality in general, because the augmented, when it comes to kind of usually with the mobile devices, but it doesn't have to be with the whole different kind of headsets that they are, and different kind of glasses and things. So it doesn't have. So there are so many different variants and different new devices coming to the market all the time. But XR is definitely super exciting of this sort of cross media, because I fully understand your passion for that, since how I see games, like besides being a gamer and and enjoying especially the storytelling aspect. Even in my opinion, everything has a story. Even the Pong, so to say, you can have a story behind. There's always a story behind every interaction and so on. So basically, for me, games as a whole medium of expression, as a creative expression from the developers, but also for it doesn't again have to be people from the technical background, because games have never been easier to make. When you think about tools that are there, and without even coding knowledge, you can make games nowadays. Without just with visual scripting or this and that, there's so many ways you can make interactive experiences as a writer, as a visual artist, as multimedia artist. So there's so many things one can do nowadays, and so resources are there. Most of them are completely free, plus YouTube and other channels are full of tutorials. Like there's like it has been really like when I've worked even with my students at university, I'm more like just go with it, experiment, and that's really exciting, especially in this kind of like XR world where you are mixing all of this. So yeah, sorry, like that was kind of like a bit of segue because I know that usually this happens even with students that they're like, okay, can you really explain what XR is? Because that's like so far it was more like mixed reality and this, but now it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
extended reality. So this is kind of why I cut you there for a moment. So apologies for that.
No,
So
no worries.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna say also that I think the relations or the similarities of working with XR, like it's very it's very similar to doing game jams many times, because this kind of industry you have to deal with clients that are not necessarily like this long term type of clients, so you are not doing like the same game project for 6 months or for 1 year or even 3 months, so it's something that comes quite fast. And because of that, I have developed almost 200 projects over those past 12 years, so it's quite a lot. And they always had like this game jam type of spirit or dynamic there, that sometimes the client would come, oh, we need a solution for this case here, or we need to present something interactive for this event, can you think of something? Then we would gather the team, come up with a game concept, or and create like sometimes not only how to say, the more boring institutional experience. It's not only about like, oh, let's just see your product in 3D, but sometimes it's actually, let's tell a story, let's present your brand, let's create a mini game many times, and it was quite cool because that allowed us to experiment a lot, and not only learn about the technology, but also learn about the practicalities, the theoretical part, the usability part, especially when we worked a lot with VR, in the beginning of the VR, not the beginning the 90s or before that, but in 2016 when the commercial headsets came out, there was no instruction manual to develop this kind of experience. Everything was kind of being experimented with, and I think they only got more consolidated after bigger games came out, like even the Half-Life Alyx. I think that was quite a milestone for the VR development.
Indeed.
But
Yes.
before that, like, we were trying all kinds of solutions. Like, is it better that I teleport like this? Is it better that I try to make the person walk? So every new project we did was kind of like a new experimentation of like, oh, how can we do this in a better way or in a cooler way? So
Yeah,
many,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have been
yeah.
my team and I we have been working a lot with the VR AR as well,
Hmm.
like as especially on
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
B2B side, like that's where we work as well. And it's also fascinating besides this diversity of different, because every project, just like in game dev, even if you are thinking about having the yet another genre mechanic or anything that it's already been done many times, especially we can see that of course in mobile market. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
what trends picks, and then the rest of the games just flood in. But still, each of them have very unique approach to whatever now aspect of experience it is, and designing these experiences. But then in kind of XR, at least from my experience, is this sort of like, because of people not knowing, and this is also where not just we as developers experimenting, but also, let's say, clients or partners with whom you are working on a specific solution, because they are
Hmm.
also not aware what is possible even to do, or even which technology would be the best. Because usually when I discuss this with our partners, it always starts with what, okay, let's discuss what you want your user or your client or whatever it is, like set up your player to experience. And then from there we start figuring out really what it is that the whole rest would be done, because
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
thing, quite many times they don't know really what is even possible, and or we are kind of really stretching the boundaries of what certain tech or solution or design, even game design. I mean, that's what I'm personally super excited
Exactly.
about, like how you can, especially as you said, this sort of boring stuff. I usually love to work with boring topics,
Hmm.
how to
Hmm.
as a designer, make it completely, this sort of shifts things around, because that's a design challenge. Like, you know,
Exactly.
how
Exactly.
do you make it exciting for the viewer, even that some this kind of, no, let's make something completely new out of it. So yeah, what is your experience in that, like with the, because you had so many projects so far, so this sort of like also with the also other industries partners and their approach to XR, because most people are of course excited to experiment, but at the same time not understanding. So maybe some tips for others who might be stepping into XR, kind of like what to be aware of or how to approach this, in your opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think the crucial step is exactly like scoping down what the experience is about, because uh, outside of the game community and the game world, like even myself as a gamer, like I'm very biased to think, oh, everybody will know how to use an interactive stuff. But when we go to talk with business clients and even like public events and this kind of stuff, many people have never like seen a VR headset, or they have never tried like a video game per se. Like it's for me, it's even crazy to think that there's people that like don't play video games at all nowadays. But like we need to keep in mind that that's a reality. Like not everybody consumes the same kind of media, either by matters of accessibility or even like by interest. And when we present a product that relies on those interactions, we need to always think of what is the entry point to make that person understand how to use this in like the first 30 seconds or 1 minute of experience, because they might never ever have like tried the video game before. So if you think about, oh, I will do a cool marketing experience with my avatar, and also like all this metaverse talk nowadays is very related to that, because everybody's kind of going like super deep into like, oh, you do this avatar and you can play around and you can fly and this kind of stuff, but people don't know how to use the keyboard to play sometimes, so you need to facilitate a lot this thing. And for me, it's quite cool also to see these reactions of the public, because you kind of also open up the mind of a lot of people of what the video games are about nowadays. Because if we talk about like the people a bit older than us, like maybe in their 50s, 60s, they also came from a generation where the video game was perceived more as a, uh, how can I say, like this uh,
Well,
fast satisfaction type of solution, or like
and
these
also
mini
children,
games and
yeah,
this kind
and
of stuff.
children experience, like this is something that it's
Mm-hmm.
quite fascinating, that
A lot.
even nowadays, like literally with the
Mm-hmm.
size
Mm-hmm.
of our industry and the variety of the products we have cross platforms. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally everything is gamified. Our whole lives are gamified, and the thing is that when people are still saying like, oh, even with the game, like games, like that's for kids, which is like, it's just so
Mm-hmm.
that there is still, and it even sometimes you can hear this in Finland, which is even more like the country of especially mobile games, if nothing else, like this sort of like really like for kids, like when you think about all of this, how it goes. And so, by the way, there will be, so welcome all the so I'm just keeping an eye also on the chat and on the questions. So there are some comments that we have besides very
Mm-hmm.
interesting discussion. So thank you, Jonathan, for that. Indeed, VR or XR overall is really interesting topic. I'm making a VR sci-fi puzzle game prototype during the summer, and it has been really interesting how you have to take so much more into account. That is so true. And that
Yeah.
sounds, by the way, amazing. Like sci-fi puzzle, yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. So yeah, those are kind of the things that are these prejudices overall towards gaming, instead of
Mm-hmm.
taking it more as you said, like multimedia experiences, because that's what they are nowadays. It's not anymore just one mechanic doing one thing, even if it seems it can be very simple. It can be one thing that you do, again thinking of, like simplicity and scoping down is one of the, the beauty of designs. But at the same time, why should player care? That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why should someone even click that thing, like on the mobile, or do something in there, or like now we have the puzzle. Why should you, like, what comes after solving that puzzle or mini puzzle or mini game, or the big,
Exactly.
scope and so on.
Exactly.
So getting that reasoning for a player to stick around is the key to like to the experience, at least in my kind of like from my point of view.
No,
uh,
for sure, for sure. Yeah, and I gotta say that nowadays that we are seeing so much of this rise of this interactive media and immersive medias and other things, like the game design is becoming even more relevant. Like I always thought that the video game is the media of the future. Like that's if we talk about what we want for this idealistic future to be with like all of these solutions in immersive spaces and such. Like the game design is super important, exactly because of the usability matters and this kind of stuff. Sure, we can talk about usability for like mobile apps and other kind of industries, but when we talk about engagement and also the fun factor, I think
Oh yeah.
it's super important to have experience and also be aware that the video games have the power to create that solution. And I do see the game jams also as a very powerful environment for people from other industries also to get to know those principles and to get to know how those things work, because sometimes we have like very qualified 3D artists or visual artists in the audiovisual or the marketing scene, but they never tried a video game before, like to develop the video game, and they
Yeah,
are
yeah,
totally capable of
absolutely.
that, So
Yeah.
we can little by little also promote the usage and the dissemination, let's say, of the video games principles all over.
For me, the game jam, like again, as from the, being in the industry and working on so many different, projects as you are, like sort of from the past,
Hmm.
also,
Hmm.
but I still, even after this many years, I still so much love game jam approach, and we actually even use it in our team as an internal game jam, jamming kind of sessions, because
Hmm.
unlike in the most of the projects that even when you work with a client or your own IP or whatever it is, the process can, like, in the game jam there is no time really to overthink, and this sort of finding these very simple solutions, which by the way of course can scale, like to, but that's getting really that you have basically no time to overthink or overcomplicate, because this is also something that
Hmm.
quite often happens in dev teams, that sort of like, because you're planning, you're creating all this, and then suddenly, regardless that you set up all your design pillars and do all of that and follow, but still, like, it's still sometimes when you step away, you see like, hey, we could totally simplify this thing more, or when you test it and you see, as you said, just a bit like, people don't, of course, like, we can only assume how players will, behave or do stuff,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
especially in VR or XR in general, like with any of the additional devices which are not that like not necessarily part of someone's household, for example, so it's a
Hmm.
new thing,
Hmm.
and therefore, takes a bit more adjusting at the spot when you try or go through it. And this is why, like, jams are so refreshing, that you find such a good, like, this is where, like, even I said back to my students, like, I always ask them to check game jam games, like itch.io is full of like, just literally play game jam games to see some kind of like how simple solutions are so powerful in all the aspects, especially UI UX design and so on, because
Exactly.
these things work like at the spot, and you just start playing, and it's basically, like, pretty much, I mean, old school games were not as user friendly as we know, but still majority of them, especially, like, it was simple, you step in, you step out, and that's kind of something
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
mobile games market definitely uh, perfected when it comes to this sort of immediate, yes, this is what you do kind of thing, and then it starts going deeper and deeper. But game jam games are, for me at least, that's something like that I enjoyed the most, to kind of see that how, like, we really don't overthink. There's no, like, you just really go to the point, and sometimes developers need that because we have, complex
For sure.
projects and all that, and sometimes it's just like, yeah, let's jam it first to see how can we really, without which
Hmm.
there is no, let's say, without which this kind of elements, this product is, well, not that product
Hmm.
anymore.
Hmm.
What is the bare minimum when you come to the core loop and so on? But yeah, not to go into design much.
Yeah, no, but perfectly said. Like that's indeed a very strong point. And to add on top of that, I think another cool factor of all of this that I see again both in the game jams, but also working in the B2B and these XR segments that uh, take the opportunity also to see people playing the games. That's like when you have the people together in the same space there, and they are like trying out the prototypes and this kind of stuff, like try to see like how do people interact with that game, how do they react with that, was it easy to play, what was it not, because um, usually if we are developing video games, we don't have like too much this direct access with the public, right? That like you need to publish the game, or like you can even send to your friends, but you're very hard like not in the very same space than they are trying that out, and I
Absolutely.
gotta say that was a very crucial also transformation in my whole career there, that I, since the very beginning of my profession, I could interact with the public. Even when I work in the museum doing like 3D experiences and such, I would just stay there in the exhibition space, taking notes of what people are doing, and like little by little, improving the usability and this kind of stuff. And I gotta
Absolutely.
say, I have a lot of memorable experiences also working with VR, that I saw like people laughing, people jumping, people crying, like because they were like emotional and like kind of in a good state, that they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
like,
yeah, in
oh,
a
this is
good
so
way.
beautiful,
Yes, yes.
so that's very special, because it really opens your eyes also how people react differently to the same content, how they, even though like you can have like the cake recipe there, like people will do,
Absolutely.
they
Their
will have
own
their
way
own
of mixing.
perception
Exactly.
of this stuff.
That's the
Hmm.
thing. Yes. And when it comes to the testing in that sense, like not talking about quality assurance kind of testing or
Hmm.
something, like that,
Hmm.
but this sort of like actually engaging with the community and audience in the sense to really understand how they would, because again we can only assume or try to, but even if we super design, like literally how still players always find a
Hmm.
way to
Hmm.
break our ways of what we intend them to do. So this is kind of like, it's always fascinating to watch, like even in the regular PC game, like what players actually do in your game. But now when it comes, I really want to poke your brain on this, because this is for me also super
Uh-huh.
fascinating.
Go for it.
Because with the VR and any kind of XR, again whichever now, but let's go with the
Mhm,
VR,
mhm,
kind of like testing, because with the PC game, for example, or mobile game or whatever, like, or even close, but just like you can have this sort of demo that you, like in Steam or on itch.io or wherever, you can just kind of have it and have, besides kind of feedback, but you can also follow kind of what people do and how people do, or like ask some people, arrange like their demo corners. Let's say IGDA
mhm,
Finland
mhm,
meetups have demo corners. Like you can always kind of be part of these, where you can watch what people do within your game and test it that way, very low key, kind of like with, let's say, 10-20 players, but it's very valuable
mhm.
experience. But then VR, like that's gonna, so what are your best practices, and something that kind of like you wish you maybe knew at the times, like as you got more experience, but just like when it
Mhm.
comes to really like how early to test, how to test, especially with this kind of technologies, because that's something that we have also had kind of like a lot of iteration with our team, especially
Mhm.
working with
Mhm.
clients and so on. So basically, just like what are your what are your takeaways there?
Sure. Yeah, VR. I gotta say, VR maybe is my favorite and also my most explored segment there. And I think the starting step of doing something for VR is knowing your audience. Like, is it uh, will the people who will experience that, are they familiar already with the technology? Will they be able to use that technology for more than 5 minutes, for example? So do you have the chance also to let them learn, the how to use the VR and get acquainted with the technology? Because the majority of projects I worked for VR, they were also made like for marketing purposes, and also like for public events and this kind of stuff. So they usually were like less than 10 minutes long. Uh, but because of that, the majority of the times people never have tried VR before. So it's a bit different when we had the opportunity to do like a VR training. That I know that not only the person will have, let's say, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour to go through the training, ideally, and they might have somebody there also to support the experience. Because sure, like you can do everything that you want inside the game itself, like have the interface, like to explain how to interact with things and everything else. But there's also the headset factor, that like how do I turn on this headset? How do I get the controller? What kind of stuff? So
Absolutely. Or if
that
something gets literally like they get lost or something gets open, how do I close this? How do, like it's a usual kind of like, yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And that's like a technology that is so new, that even though it has been released commercially like 6 years ago, 6 years? No, actually eight
No,
years ago
eight.
now.
Yeah,
Oh, whew, time flies. Yeah.
yeah. I know.
Uh, a lot of people still don't have contact with that, So you shouldn't expect people in VR to know what they are doing or what they need to do. And I had a cool experience a couple of years ago that I presented this VR project in Dubai at the GITEX conference there, and we had a lot of discussions on like what will the scope be and what kind of project should it be, and it was just like to demonstrate or to take people to this Amazon village in VR,
Hmm.
and we came out with the solution. Like I think that's also an important lesson from game jams. Like to have the humbleness to cut out the scope. To like make sure that like this is what I need to present. Like all the rest is kind of optional or extra or like this uh, additional feature there. And when we prepared the experience, and we had like a very simple passive type of experience, that you just look around, you can look at some hotspots and get like, oh, this is the Brazilian nuts tree, this is the village river and this kind of stuff. I had a feedback also from some people before the event was starting that VR is such an old technology now that you need to do something more interactive. People will get bored quite fast and this kind of stuff, and they won't like the experience. And when we went to the event, it was the total opposite, because people never had contact with VR before. I think the majority of people there have never tried, and the people who tried, they have tried like some roller coaster demo or like some scary type of experience, that also got them kind of skeptical of utilizing this. And I had very nice experiences there of people also putting the headset and kind of being, in this all moment, that they were like, oh my God, this is so cool, this is so realistic. And because the interaction was so simple, they could immerse themselves in a easier way, like they wouldn't kind of break from the experience, even though they were like in this super crowded event with hundreds of people visiting. Like I saw people there also who got emotional. Like we had this guy also from Africa there that he tried out the experience. He said, "Oh, I need to move back like to the forest. Like I really like this kind of stuff." And he had like tears in his eyes and everything. It was very very powerful type of experience, and the usability was super simple. And many times, even though it's just like a passive type of experience, quite often I need to tell people, like you can look around, like you can turn around. Like it doesn't come naturally as we think. So, even though like you can just move your head to enjoy the experience, people don't understand that. So you always need to have like this kind of support in mind when working with the VR and this kind of tech. And
And
again, like if you are gonna develop something super advanced for VR, keep in mind that maybe you need time with the public to do that.
oh,
Yes.
absolutely. And but people do enjoy this sort of, let's say, Zen experience, meaning that you do explore in your own terms whatever topic, whatever environment. Like it's and because I think from it, at least again from my personal experience in this field,
Hmm.
it just like depends with whom you speak. If you speak with developers, they would say exactly what you said. Oh, it's already kind of old thing. No, it's for us, yes, because like
Hmm.
we have
Hmm.
headsets at home, like all the generations of headsets and whatnot, but people don't. And also, it's not something that is necessarily even available to them anywhere outside. Like maybe some might have it at work, some might have, but otherwise it's not really there. And therefore but this sort of like having more, like even onboarding people through very like Zen or this sort of just walking simulator kind of thing,
Hmm.
just to
Hmm.
kind of like just get familiar, get to like that sort of make that turn, make 360 turn, have an actual physical step, because like you have, there will be grid and all that, so like, but
Exactly. Exactly.
make that step in
Yeah.
the virtual
Yeah.
environment is something that it's for so many people.
Hmm.
I've seen so many like, oh my, and this sort of like
Yeah.
actually walking towards something as an act,
Huh?
even as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a cool comment about that one, and also I worked on the Virtual Helsinki project a few years ago.
Oh,
Like for
that
people
was
who,
amazing. I mean, huge congrats on that still. Like
uh,
it's
thank you, and congratulations to the team. Also, like we had a lot of people. I think almost 60 people working on that project for
no, that
multiple years.
was,
So
yeah,
it
that was
was quite the
incredible.
achievement. And it still holds up to nowadays, and that project was also an example of these usability questions, because initially I had a lot of intentions of doing interactive things, that like you would be in the Senate Square and you would be like this rock star singer and raise your hands and then everybody would kind of shout with you and this kind of stuff, but because this was being made for public events and I knew that like, people will have like 5 minutes to try it out, like I had to kind of start cutting out all the corners there. But there's a specific moment in this experience that is very cool, that we have this reconstruction of the Alvarado house. Alvarado, for people from abroad who are listening, is maybe the main architect here in Finland, just like we have the Niemeyer in Brazil. And in his house, it's a very calm type of experience, but because of the scale of the room, if you take like a few steps, you actually move a lot in the room, so like I can go to the shelf and this kind of stuff. And I always tell people to look under the piano. So if anybody here is listening to this and like have tried that experience with me, like I probably have also crouched under the piano there, because it's not only to show the three-dimensionality, let's say, of the stuff, but to let people know that, look, I can move in this space, like it's not like a 360 video or something like that. I can actually go under the objects and I can try this kind of stuff, So that's an example of like a more casual type of experience, that I always promote this kind of interaction. But if you are doing like a VR game, for example, like also my advice is try to experiment with this uniqueness of the media, like what is the thing that sets it apart, like I can just shoot objects standing, or I can actually use my body, like I can move around and do things to actually feel more, not only necessarily immersed, like that's a whole philosophical discussion there, but like a feeling that I am using the real uniqueness, the real things that set the VR apart. And in
That is so
comparison to
true.
like
I
2D
mean,
screens.
yeah, that is so true. 100% agree. Especially because now when I'm like this sort of like crouching, even sitting down, like depending on the like if you have a physical chair where you are supposed to sit, of course with the assistance of someone, like, or you start from sitting and then you stand up and then you interact. Depends again on the design. And needs, of course, like because we even did some rehabilitation side where you had to start
Ah,
from there and
yeah,
then
yeah.
you can, so it's kind of the whole thing. So these
Mm-hmm.
are kind of, and then also the hand tracking, as especially for the Quest and some others. So this is another thing now that when people actually, act, the movement actually is like
Mm-hmm.
making difference, not
Mm-hmm.
just with the, but sometimes people prefer, like, can I switch back in settings to have the and for some, I don't know, my thought on that, I don't know, is it, but just like what I have a feeling why people like to hold something, because again there is no really, I mean, you can do the gestures but you don't have really a feeling of touching, but if you are
Yeah,
pressing the buttons you
yeah.
have kind of feel more control, or maybe you are grounded with it, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like this is
Mm-hmm.
my kind of like, because it is also interesting that to see that how many people want to go full Minority Report, this sort of thing, and then some people
Right,
who
right.
so who want to do like really give the, but yeah, and then also we had a comment about haptic effects, of course, like there are this sort of that you can have
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
the
Uh-huh.
controllers doing trees or whatnot. So this is of course one of these really important aspects. But it just of course there is now also the gloves and things one can have, and they're not even that expensive anymore. So I mean, of course these
Mm-hmm.
for whatever usage, like for industry usage, when they have like they can be like €1,000 glove kind of thing, but usually they're like $100, few $100, like to kind of like have the, if you really want to kind of have. So they're getting better and cheaper, obviously, each year.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
will see where that goes, like that you can actually then do with the whole. But I really enjoyed it with at least as a from UI UX perspective, it's really interesting also to have this sort of like how you handle kind of like the interaction with, let's say, touch I mean hand tracking compared to using, even if it's the same experience, just different settings. So that's always. We also
Mm-hmm.
had a comment about this sort of mobility within the game. So the person who is making the puzzle game also considering to
Uh-huh.
have the the teleportation and also the locomotion kind of like aspects there, and there are of course different players, I mean the different reactions from the people on any of these. Some people do have no problem with. For example, there was one. I know one of the master students at University of Turku. I was at the presentation. Did exactly this kind of project, kind of like of different. Like if you have just like moving like what is it called? Like escalators, kind of moving thing that you would stand and
like
it
this,
would move you.
this
Yeah,
treadmill.
treadmill kind of thing. And then if you walk or if you teleport, and that's sort of like how this kind of of course, like different users prefer different things, but teleportation became like it's still. Is it still most? I'm just like, because that's something that is kind of like still kind of among the best practices, because the way how
Yeah.
teleportation is working, it's actually quite smooth and quite well done, even within the like the experience itself. So that's kind of most used. But then again, any of your thoughts on this topic, maybe some even
Hmm.
tip for the viewer who is going to make this
Oh
into
yeah.
a more like, what is in your experience kind of the movement within the VR? What
Hmm.
would you kind of?
Yeah, that's a very recurrent discussion, I would say, and I think maybe one of still the biggest pain points of the whole VR technology and such. When I developed the experiences there, we experimented also with different solutions. Not only the teleportation or like walking to stuff, but for example, doing something that, let's say, if I take a step forward, then my character starts walking forward, and like if I lean back, like I get stopped, to experiment with those things. But it kind of opens up like so many ramifications of usability when you try any of those
Mm-hmm.
approaches, that you really need to keep in mind maybe the accessibility of the mobility that the person has, because
Absolutely.
like if we are doing something for people to try out in their houses, many times they might not have enough space to actually walk around, or like to move, or even like to open their arms like this and this kind of stuff. I can say even here at my office, like I play sometimes. I play a lot like this mini golf VR game, the Walkabout mini golf, which is really cool game. And many times I play here at the office, and like it kind of limits a bit my movement, so I just use the teleportation and this kind of stuff. But if I go to my living room, for example, where I have more space, then I can walk around and this kind of stuff. Um, I think that's maybe one of the key aspects to keep in mind, because if you are doing something that, let's say, oh, I will do this for an event that I have control of the environment and I have control of the exhibition space, and I know that people have like this three
Absolutely.
square meters area, then go for it with the mobility. What I really recommend also checking is playing the Half-Life Alyx with the development commentary on, because they also explain a lot about these usability things, and then they did something very ingenious there. That was when you teleport, like not only you have like this mild fading, but also you have the sound effects of the steps. So it feels more that like, oh, I actually move it to that place instead of I was just place it there. I
Yeah.
think this kind of feelings, the sensorial experience is very important. It's not only about the visuals, but also like the haptic feedbacks of that, or the sounds and such. Like if you do a little bit of this very mild vibration, that like, oh, I move it there and kind of, like I kind of like if I landed in the place, like that already feels different. If just like, oh, I just teleported like this ghost
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
different space.
Absolutely. I have to say that I quite often test things for the sitting setup, because I do know that quite
Mhm.
many people still want to just sit and play. And it can be that you sit
Yeah.
literally chair like this, you just set up your like
Hmm.
environment, but you are in the chair, which is also quite interesting because of the, if you're setting up that you are
Hmm.
like this
Hmm.
height, so this kind of, so that will be, and then you can see like kind of like a child or so, like that you can kind
Uh-huh.
of
Uh-huh.
see from a different perspective than you would be kind of standing up, or then again, uh, because it can be like I actually played quite many of the shooter games just by sitting, like just I didn't want
Uh-huh.
to, like
Uh-huh.
I was just like, no, I'm gonna be in my regular gamer kind of like setting,
Right. Right.
and then be completely this sort of like what I don't know, make like
Yeah.
like it's just like regular, like I'm
Yeah.
like sit, but no, sit and do the playing, but then I would like just do it that way, and then I would be just like, and it worked really well. I mean, experience
Hmm.
wise, is
Hmm.
like that is not a problem. But of course, Beat Saber and so on, that requires a bit make
Ah, yeah. No,
more
for
movement.
sure.
But there's so many wonderful games in VR, and I do hope to have more of. I mean, this sort of like the more games are coming. At least this year at GDC, it was so many VR and XR solutions and I'm expecting even more at Gamescom. I'm just saying like this, so it's really, really on the rise, and it's beautiful, beautiful to see. We are closing. I just realized that we have been already talking for like 43, like 45 minutes soon, and I do know that you have like I want to be respectful of your schedule. I know that we can talk about this for days, and we shall have a sequel to this. I mean, this was absolutely fantastic, and it's so wonderful to can also pick your brain like this, very much ad hoc, because I said like working in this field, it's also like there's so many things I would love to explore more with you, but yeah. So now for the kind of like, let's say if someone would like to step into this, start trying, let's say not just VR but any of other XR technologies and so on, what would be your recommendation? Where to start? How to even like step in?
Yeah, I think, well, doing this initial brainstorm of like, oh, what is the solution that I want to bring? You know, like what is the core problem that I'm trying to solve, or what's the main experience that I want the people to experience? Well, not only talk about like the business aspect, you know, but also like the gameplay aspect, you know.
Gameplay
I think
first, always. This is even what I say to
exactly,
clients. Like, no,
exactly.
like first gameplay, user
Per,
centric.
perfectly said, you know, like don't worry about like the visuals or this kind of stuff, because they won't really matter if the gameplay or the usability is not good enough. You know, people will kind of be like, we can
And you
use
can
Minecraft as an
always
example, no?
and you can
Like
always polish stuff more, blah blah blah. Like that's the like that stuff.
exactly,
The
exactly,
fluff comes
exactly,
later.
exactly. So keep in mind, you know, like how do you gain your public or your audience in these first minutes of experience? You know, like what is the core message that you want to say there? And of course, you know, like don't be afraid to experiment. Like as I said also in our other talk, they're not only experiment with the usability and the gameplay itself, but also with yourself, you know, your skills. You know, like try to get out of sometimes out of the comfort zone. Also, if you are a 3D artist, you know, try to do a little bit of coding, try to do a little bit of audio design and this kind of stuff, because it will also open up your mind to how can you solve those problems more easily, and how can I, for example, work together with people in the team, you know, that develop those things. So that's a very important lesson that kind of also, I think, helps to humble the developer, you know, like so that, you know, like the more humbleness you have, like I think the better you become into developing the things, because you are more open to understand the process, understand the values of the product that you are doing, and of course, like facilitates also having fun into this process. You know, I think that's also super important. You know, like don't get stressed out, especially in the game jam. You know, like make sure that you are enjoying the process and, you know, learning and kind of sharing the experiences there with everybody.
There was a comment about Unreal Engine VR template that
Mm-hmm.
it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts on that? Just sorry, it just came as a kind of one
Yeah,
of the
no,
last
it's
minute.
sure.
Yeah. So
Uh,
thoughts
I can
on
say
the
it's
this
quite
template? Yeah,
robust.
yeah,
Yeah, you know, like it's a very good starting ground, and I think that for sure would be something that I would really have appreciated like 8 years ago to have had in mind, you know, or in hands there to work with.
yeah. We
Many
would,
of the
yes.
things we have now in those templates we also did by scratch like 8 years ago. You know, that we would have to code, and like there was no manual, there was no forums online or this
There
kind of
was
stuff. No, so
nothing. Like literally, we
yeah,
had to kind of like what does the how does this put together?
exactly, exactly. And like please use those templates. You know, like they are very good, and I think they really help you also to learn and to experiment also. You know, like you can just get the code that already exists there and like do a little alteration, this kind of stuff to create something new. You know,
And
so
same
don't
thing
be
now.
afraid.
Speaking of also, just like I would also recommend to look into like just take even these sort of templates or just overall that you know it works for other like the assets, like literally 3D assets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Start from there, because if you like see what works, especially with the optimization and so on, because it has to be optimized. As I mean, that's another topic for another day, but kind of like
Mm-hmm.
making it all work like well, so not being heavy and so on. So basically checking these, like how are these made, like analyze stuff, learn from what has been done. And there is so many resources once again out there that you can use, both Unity, Unreal, like stores, kind of having these free assets, just that you can literally just try things out, and don't be afraid of failure. Like this is what if it does, so what if it doesn't work, so what? Like
Mm-hmm.
there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing like, so just try it out, figure it out and adjust basically also what your team kind of like can, like based also on the skill, like scope down, then back to scoping down, like what you can do, and then do the best you can within that, and that's it. And then you will get better and better, or get more like this kind of, you will hear from other developers how they do it, what they do, what they did wrong, because that's the whole point of sharing this kind of both bad and goods, in a sense that this is what we did, this worked for us, might not work for you, or other way around, so maybe this will work
Mhm.
for you that didn't work for us. But sharing that is the most important thing, I think, and this is beautiful thing about games industry, because we are all there for each other and sharing a lot. So yeah, just engage with the community as well. That's also another
I totally agree with
important.
that, and I consider it to be a good practice also to always keep a good backup of the projects you do, like in game jams and everything, because you can always revisit them to create something new. Like I have done not only the XR games and this kind of experience, but also like a mobile game of a game jam I did with my brother. Like in 2017, I made like a weekend project with him, and then in 2021, I decided, oh, I will go back to that prototype, see what worked, and then we actually released the game. So
Exactly, like
it's
that's
quite cool.
so many, and you just store these ideas that like have them there, you never know, like same like artist sketches. So like you always you have some there,
Hmm.
like oh
Hmm.
yeah, there was something that might be kind of my train of thought from that time, we could maybe now explore further. But yeah, so
Exactly.
Jonathan is also in our Discord, and of course, if anyone wants to get directly in touch, we can definitely arrange that. But Jonathan, what is the easiest way to approach you directly? Any kind of like social media that you prefer? Or
Well, I was saying nowadays I think I use LinkedIn the most, so I think that's maybe the best place to find me and also reach me out. Like I'm always happy to help, and especially if you have like any research project or the student kind of project, like I'm super open also to contribute, so
wonderful,
make
yeah,
sure that you have
yes.
like the guidelines and
So we'll make
whatever I
introductions. We
can do.
will help
Yeah.
facilitate. So please, no worries there. And yes, reach. You can also directly reach out to Jonathan through LinkedIn. And yes, thank you, Jonathan, so much for being with us today and being part of the jam. And yeah, I cannot wait to continue this discussion. It
Uh-huh.
was so wonderful to start a day like this. And have
Yeah.
amazing rest of the weekend and jam. Now, for
Cool.
the rest of the viewers, we will continue in 10 minutes with the Pedro, and furthermore with kind of like a program for the afternoon. But for now, we're going to have few minutes break, and before Pedro joins, I will be sharing some more updates about technicalities of each IO and how to prepare your games and so on. So stay tuned. But now we are going to say bye-bye to Jonathan and have a little break. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you everybody. Have fun there. See you.
Cheers. And we are back. Hello, hello. And we have now with us Pedro Zambon. I hope that I have pronounced correctly. So sorry if I
Yeah, you
haven't.
do.
Good. So lovely to have you. And also you just arrived to Finland, didn't you?
Exactly. As the pilot said in the landing, the sunny and warm Helsinki.
For
So
once, like that doesn't happen often. so, so here we go. Welcome to very warm Helsinki, which is like, oh. So yeah. Well, I hope you enjoy the hot weather because I usually don't. This is not my cup of tea. I do know that most of the southern people do because I should. Like I'm from the South Europe, so I should. But no, I really enjoy colder weather, and the snow and all. But it's nice. It's nice. It has it's been a long winter, so this feels okay for now. But I will complain in a month. I know that. Like that's gonna be a thing. But yeah. So
yeah, well, I'm really happy to be here. I arrived yesterday. No, yes, 2 days ago. I have been. I will be here for 2 weeks to iterate with my Finnish friends, and it will be really nice. So and now it's really interesting to being here at the same time that we having this crossing latitudes game jam going on, Brazil, Finland, and
perfect
Brazilian in
timing.
Finland. Perfect
Exactly,
timing.
perfect timing. Yes. So let's start with that. Please, let's start with the introduction. So tell us who you are, what you do, and the rest will follow.
Amazing. So, well, I am most than ever with a hat of a researcher right now, but my background connecting with the games industry is into the academic field. I sta started to work researching the games more than 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago now, in my master's back in Brazil in São Paulo State University. And I have been studying development of the games industry, how to support game development ecosystems. That was my thing. But I started doing it in the kind of the boom of the indie game scene. So I iterated a lot with the indie game devs. I got in love with this indie game devs community. And since then, from this background researching this sector, I also started to help some associations and institutions to implement programs or even making some research to gather data to help them to make things for the games industry. Because especially policymakers, and I work a lot with policymakers, they sometimes they want to do something for games, but they have no idea how to do it because we are not exactly a startup. We are also not exactly an audiovisual film a sector. We are in between these two fields, and they need some kind of understanding and guidance on this. So I have been working the last years helping these institutions to implement this kind of supporting programs for game devs. My favorite one, of course, is the game incubation program in São Paulo, funded by SPCine. SPCine is an agency from the municipality of São Paulo, and it's now I think 3 years they have these programs running. So I'm really proud of it. It was the first kind of its kind program in Brazil. And yes, so I have been working a lot with this kind of projects. But now I moved to the Netherlands by February, and I wanted to go back to academia to research a little bit more because, well, I'm kind of a nerd of research. And now I moved from the social science, that my background, because I wanted to build some kind of tool, a hands-on solution. And there is this amazing lab in the University of Utrecht, where I'm located now in the Netherlands. They are building some algorithm facilitated matchmaking tools, nothing for games, but that's my role. Try to use this technology to address these information issues in the games industry. Because when I was managing incubator and also talking with some friends that was managing these kind of programs, we always complain that we can help with a lot of mentoring, but sometimes the team has some crucial problems of cultural fit or lacking skills or something like this. And even some solo game devs knock the door of the incubator saying, oh, I wanted to find some co-founders, what I can do. And I say, well, as an incubator, I can do anything for you. I only help already formed teams. So say, well, maybe that's a problem in the industry that I can address with research and some development. So here I am now in the Netherlands, but traveling a little bit to Europe to collect uh, the information to help me into this uh, quest. So that's a little bit of the overview. We can dig it up on these things.
It sounds good. It sounds amazing. I mean, I'm very curious about this tool, to be honest. Also, as a fellow nerd academic, so that's always fun. Like, of course, and so as a researcher, but I mean, what I gathered also that this tool could be very well utilized even when it comes to, I mean, as a game jam organizer again, like getting people to actually find a match, do this sort of like figuring out like of course ad hoc team making is part of the fun. There is absolutely like no problem there, but it does happen that and this is nothing kind of like again, we never had, like, knock to the wood, we never had this for past 10 plus years of organizing different kind of jams. There was never, let's say, a problem between the teams like that was that. But of course it could happen that some people would, let's say, split into smaller from the bigger team that they initially, because the visions did not go well, which is again completely natural, like there is no issue with that. But I'm just seeing that as an organizer, that this tool would be so cool to actually utilize. So can you tell even a little bit more about that tool? I'm sorry to be nerding here about it.
No, no, please. Well, I can speak hours about this because it's literally my research. But well, of course, I need to make this disclaimer for our audience that research, it's the fun and the nightmare of the research at the same time is that you have an objective, a question, a good hypothesis, but you never knows if you will actually achieve a result. So it's, as a researcher, I cannot, and I'm not here in the role of these crazy startups promising to solve all the problems of the world.
But that's the beauty of
So
it also, because the thing is that that's kind of like
yeah.
this might or might not work, and the thing is that this is the at least approach we're taking, and because of this and that, and that's the beauty of research and figuring out stuff. I mean, like for others that might become a business, but again, business.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, I like to make this disclaimer because I don't want to the audiences that is not aware about the how research happens, thinks that I will actually deliver everything that I'm trying to do, but at least I have a good amount of evidence that actually it's something possible. But going back to how at least the approach that I am doing right now. So this laboratory that I'm being part of with the amazing supervision of Ioana Licorenzo, it's my supervisor in the research. She's have been researching how to make better team formation for other setups, from crowdsourcing to self-organized collaborative script writing and these kind of things. But the tool itself, the technology itself, it's a really powerful optimization algorithm. What that means? That means that you can put a lot of criteria in there, tell to the algorithm the weights that you give for each criteria, which one of these criteria are obligatory and which one of these criteria are optional. And this algorithm system will make the complex calculations to show you the coefficient of similarity or complementarity between the individuals that you want to connect. So basically, it's a tool to help you to make all the calculations that we actually are doing when we are forming teams. Because when you are in a game jam, you are finding your peers. You're actually looking, oh, I am a programmer. I need an artist and maybe a sound designer and a game designer. And you are calculating this balancing of skills. You are calculating the common motivations. You are calculating the cultural fit, the work styles. You are calculating all these things in the background, but you are not actually making a spreadsheet and comparing all the people in the room. You are basically stumbling around and by chaos finding someone that kind of fit what you're looking for. What I'm trying to do is using this tool not to impose, and that's the mistake of a lot of these systems that exist. They kind of say, oh, work with that person. That's your team. And it's shitty because we are doing a creative products. We want to retain the agency on who we work with. So the idea is to basically facilitate these background calculations, define this criteria, and also create a modular way to define, well, which criteria are important for you or for your event, and etc., and give you a map for guide you whom it's interesting for you to talk with for maybe form this team. And also it is this algorithm system can it can respect your strong preferences. So if you are going with a friend and you really want to work with that person, even if for some reason the algorithm think that you doesn't fit with each other, doesn't matter, because the preference, the personal preference, your empathy, your feeling, it's more important than the
The data.
to yeah, the data and etc. But in the end of the day, it's more like helping the humans to deal with these complex data that we cannot process in a fast setup moment like a tick formation in game jams, of course, but in other setups too, and reserving our time for what humans are better than any machine, that it's feeling and chemistry and all these kind of things. But you will have for you this information to see, okay, that's are the persons who fits with my work style, that's the person with the same motivation, that's are the person with the balancing skills. So ideally, that's the best thing for me, but then I can input what I want, and with this iteration, ideally, we will form better teams. So that's my goal, help to form better teams, especially because we are in an industry with a lot of constraints in terms of also networking lockdowns. Basically, there are maybe your dream team, it's with someone that you do not have access because it's in another bubble. And when geographically speaking, or even with a lot of problems that we have in gender imbalance or everything like this. So basically, it's also a tool to help to explode some of these bubbles and help you to find people outside your close network. And maybe your best fit will be outside the network, and you will have a facilitation to reach this person and maybe wanting to work with them. So it's that's the dream, but we can go a little bit more.
Yes, and that amazing dream. And also I would love to, again, like, if how far is the tool, like, can one possibly maybe at the next year's crossing latitudes we could try to utilize? That would be amazing.
Yes, yes, definitely. The algorithm system, they already exist. What do not exist that I've been doing right now is define the criteria for making the tool take the decision to suggesting the peers in the team formation. So what are the important factors? What are the skills that the a team game dev team needs? What are the ideal team size? What are what kind of work styles are important to consider, and which one of these work styles iterates better or creates some clashes? For example, like people who likes to work overnight and need to work synchronously, and people that prefers to work asynchronously. Sometimes it gives clashes, so you can use this kind of criteria. So basically, I'm retrieving as much as information as possible to train this tool and of course I will test different setups of this tool to see which criteria are better to guide into this information process. So we have infinite amount of possible data that we can input into but anyone wants to spend 2 hours answering forms or anything like this. So we need to be really chirurgical in which kind of information are more important.
Yeah, and
And
also just even surveys overall. I mean, as you know, like the people to getting someone to actually answer the survey, because the reason why even in this jam we have several surveys that we will be sharing. One of yours is actually gonna be your survey as well. But the thing is that like this helps us, especially with the feedback and so on, like how to make it even better, how to make it more accessible, how to make it more inclusive, like all of these things that as a culture of our organization is all about. So basically that's why surveys for us are the easiest on the kind of big scale to get that information or ideas how to improve. So that's why we ask like humbly to answer, but of course we do understand that yet another survey kind of thing, so it's understandable, but at the same time do consider filling in the surveys because it does help us make all these events improve throughout the time. So no, that sounds amazing, and I really would love to see how we can utilize in so many as you said, like this can be, I can see already so many different places where one could benefit from this tool. But yeah, for next Crossing Latitudes, let's aim to have that tool as another
yeah,
option and tool for the participants to use, and then navigate through and find their teams, as well as of course chaos is always there. I mean, like we breathe in chaos. I mean, it's games
it,
industry, this is how we exist. But yeah.
I do not have the ambition of taming this chaos, but I want to help this chaos to happen in a way that uh, iterates better on the makes people. It's about losing time. So sometimes you are losing a lot of time trying to seek who you want to work with. So I want to mind this gap. And when we're talking about game jam, sometimes we do not have much time for this. So
Of
it's a
course,
little bit
yeah,
about
yeah,
this. Yeah.
absolutely, yes, yes, yes. And again, for so many different solutions, this could be great tool. But jams are also a great place to test, because different people from completely different backgrounds, different experiences, different, and by experiences meaning that even just game jam wise, like is someone first time there, or is someone already having 20th jam or 100th jam. Like we just had one of our super jammers from Finland, Samuli Askelainen, last year at the retro jam. It was his like 100th jam, like that, like 100 game jams that he participated in. So that was quite a like quite an achievement. So there are these sort of super jammers, but then like and from this sort of different people from different place that they come, like the different states of mind, and these are like what expectations also to the to the event, because again everyone comes with a maybe some predetermined expectations or maybe none, but then they come like they and every game jam is different. I can tell that even as an organizer, like every jam that either I organize or participate completely or do both. Sometimes I also jam while I organize. This not this time, because it was a very hectic time at work, and also I had to kind of just scope down, like say no to jamming, but very happy to organize, of course. And but no, that sounds fantastic. I really want to poke your brain a bit about, I mean, because as a fellow indie dev, and then you being like this sort of working with indies for a majority of your career, anything that you want to tell more about the especially indie dev scene in Brazil? Eliana Rossi yesterday talked that basically almost all the companies are indie by the kind of like status, so to say, of the company. But there is also this indie mindset of what indie means, because again, like there are different indies and different indie business side of things, but from someone who has been working really closely with the indies, especially in Brazil, can you tell us a bit more of the scene and how things have been evolving throughout the years in the indie scene and so on? That would be wonderful to hear.
Oh, how to start? But well, Elena probably already told a lot of about the shape and the status of the games industry in Brazil, the number of companies and all these kind of things. Uh, uh, we have around 1,000 mapped game studios in Brazil. But yeah, most of them are indie game devs. But there is, I can iterate a little bit on my seeing this industry growth in the last 10 years,
Yes, please.
how this ecosystem of indie game dev scene are being evolving in Brazil. I can say that we can not only in Brazil but all over places. But Brazil has a particular limitation due to geographic distance in the center of the industry, lack of local funding ecosystem for game development. So basically, if you want to fund your production, you mostly rely on external funds and investment in the private sector. And but the thing is, sometimes you are going indie not because you want to become an entrepreneur or have a company. You are becoming indie because it's the way for you to making games. It's entrepreneur by demand. So I have to. I do not have jobs for me because, well, I'm recently graduated. Do not have big companies here in Brazil hiring, and but I want to make games. So the only way for me to make games is making my own game. It's not because I really want to have a company. It's because I want to make games, and that's the way to make games. The airport, indie, or nothing. And for this setup, we have a lot of indie game devs who they're really talented, but they doesn't really want to eat the broccoli needed to have a game studio sustainable to, well, marketing, publishing, gather investments, and blah blah blah. Because more and more with all these games going on, maybe in 2011, 12, you can only make a good game, putting in Steam and being profitable. But right now, it's not like this. So you have spent a lot of your effort in community building, marketing, business development, and etc.
Everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
we do everything in the house. We are completely independent and self-sufficient, self-financing studio. So I can tell, yes, it is. But at the same time, I have to say, for all the devs out there, as someone who works also in corporate and all this, and with the publishers, investors, it's not more difficult. It's just different way and different kind of things that you have to approach. So it's not like, oh, it's easier with the publisher or it's easier with it. Nothing. It's still a lot of work. Everything is a lot of work, but just like it's a different kind of things you need to also consider, especially if you are doing everything. So just kind of that's which is not harder. So sometimes it's way easier because you are in charge of how you are going to handle stuff with your community, with your product, with your communication, everything else. So it's not just like, yeah, but you do need your broccoli, I have to say. Yes, yes.
and sometimes these devs they just want to make their code and their art and their game design. But they are not doing it for someone else because do not exist this job opportunity or outsourcing opportunity, or they even doesn't have the contacts or network to find their spot into the industry. So they are kind of obligatorily going indie, of course, because they have some passion project they want to work with, but also because there is kind of the only way. So that's what happened for a long time. But lately in Brazil, some kind of companies start to grow quite a lot. And the availability of jobs and people entering the industry, not making their own games, but making someone else games and learning first. It's something that I tell, if you have a learning curve, it's better learning with a salary with someone else's money without learning with all your own money, your own time, and yes, but
Oh, definitely
and
you
this
will be like this sort of like using your money and time and everything else regard, even if you're doing on the side thing, because just kind of like, but yes, definitely, if you can, do learn from other projects and the way kind of get that experience, just so that you can avoid the biggest kind of headaches. But there will be headaches regardless. Like that's
but that and that's the thing. At the end of the day, going back to the original question about the indie game devs in Brazil, we have a lot of game companies. Some of them, they just are going indie because they do not find their place in the industry. Some of them, they really want to make their own IPs, make their game studio, but they do not have yet the means in terms of knowledge and context to doing so. And we have some that it's really experience focused, and they really know what they want, and they enter and they have some background in the industry already, or they already have some entrepreneurial mindset, so they are really focused on having a company. But in this sense, the problem is that sometimes we have thousands of prototypes and vertical slices, but how many of these games actually become commercial launch? So the gap today is helping them to actually knowing how to launch their games, because it demands funding, it demands investment, it demands a lot of things that sometimes they do not have. So that's why I think these programs that mind this gap with some kind of incubators and acceleration programs and these kind of things are important. But also something that is happening in Brazil in the last years and that's been really important are public funds, grants that helps into this first cycle that anyone that doesn't making it because love you put money in your lap for making your idea without anything to show them. Like the real problem in the industry is because when you do not have anything to show, anyone will give you money instead of maybe your parents or your uncle or your brother, whatever.
Yes. Family, friends,
But
fools. That's the usual.
yes, exactly. But in the end of the day, you need time, and time demands money, because you need to do not be working for something else to focus in your project. And for this, you have a gap. You need this thing. And in the last years, we have a lot of grants and public funds that is starting to give this start into some of these studios, giving them time to breathe and commit their mistakes and learn and have their better shaped prototypes to have now the maturity to prospect the private funding. So more and more Brazil are in a highlight in the games industry because we growth in a maturity level of professional quality in terms of art and implementation of the games. The cost of production in Brazil is much lower than the global north, so to say, because you can tell that 2,000 euros in Brazil, basically you can hire a senior. And in Finland, you can tell what you can do with 2,000 euro. So the exchange rate it's valuable in Brazil, and so the same investment in Europe will cost differently in Brazil. So and the base talent when that can be expanded in Brazil, it's almost infinite, because different than Finland and most of European countries or North America or UK, that all the talent base already have been hired and you started to import talents from abroad. Brazil has a lot of young, talented professionals who are there waiting for opportunities. So you basically can expand a lot in terms of hiring quality talent professionals. So it's a really good time spot for Brazil. There is a lot of stars aligning that helps making Brazil a really good frontier for the games industry. The investors are starting to realize that. Last year, Brazil being the spotlighted nation in Gamescom, now a big festival becoming Games Con Latam, and all these kind of things going on. And this year we had a legal framework approved in Brazilian Congress. There is a law that established some kind of parameters to support the local games industry in Brazil, uh, to to uh, to shape what is the game sector, and even giving some kind of uh, uh, funding schemes that is established by law. So there is a lot of good things going on that put on Brazil in a really good position in the frontier of the games industry. So I talked a lot, but it's
No, no, no.
literally
Please,
it was
no.
my
That's why we have you here. Please.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think people have enough of me anyway from all of these streams. But I have a few comments that I like. I really loved what you said. So many things. But one thing about the, let's say, indies and funding and so on. We have also seen in Europe. So just like generally, because I've been working with indies like for most of my career, and then becoming indie as well. But one thing that happens quite often, even when you have, let's say, you get the money, you get the investment, like so you did it, but because the knowledge of how and some kind of like things which are very much specific, like you mentioned, like publishing on Steam. So for example, how, where, how do you handle all of that? It's not just pressing the button, the whole, so many things that you need to do way before, during, and then after, and the whole, like it's a, so many steps are there, and in so many different moving parts that you need to also kind of like, because timing is really important and whatever, like so many other things. And so knowing that, so this is kind of like, even with the money, quite many don't get the results that they are expecting or that their investors expected, and so, because sure, data will, like, predictions are there, but because they didn't get, so this is one thing that we have seen in the Europe, like especially, like just saying locally, like because I can speak for this side, kind of what pain is. So this sort of like figuring out the ways that we can also support in this to share this knowledge, like share it, like how do you actually do it? And this is more like a community, but can be also business opportunities for those. But just from the, I can tell you from the We Love Games side, because this reminded me, like we have now established Indie Game Alliance, which is literally a community of game developers globally, which by the way, anyone can apply, like the form is on our website. But the thing is that we want game developers to meet other indie developers and learn from each other, collaborate, do all of that as a kind of like, as a community. Because that is the best way. Again, if one grows, everyone else will grow with that knowledge. Like that's how it works, at least in our ecosystem. So this is something that we have kind of like, as listening the indie community, we have established now this Indie Game Alliance, and this just started this beginning of this year. So we are just starting to bring it up, and it's international, obviously. So it's also kind of understanding. For example, someone wants to make games that are and figuring out how to communicate, how to do stuff. For example, for Latin America, like, okay, how do I do it? So then talk to the local developers, local professionals like yourself, like who are with the incubator, knowing what's happening, knowing how people are, meaning players, like how do you approach this, and so another way around, someone from Brazil wants to reach maybe African continent, then let us introduce you to these people. And so basically just like this sort of network, very organic, very, again, community of game dev professionals, but within the indie scene, where so when you get the money, you know what to do with it, because quite often it can happen that it's also like it didn't reach what you were, and you put so much effort to get that money, because we know how hard it is to get any investment, and especially in indies. So unless you already have some big name from some X whatever company to kind of be, so that would be the, the start to confirm to investors or publishers that you can deliver. But even so, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would work. So this is one way that, by simply listening throughout the years, like this is the one way we thought that would add to it. And of course, working with other organizations, in collaboration, like now, even with the embassy of Brazil in Helsinki, but also Gamescom Asia, Gamescom this one, like so many other conferences, events, but also organizations to kind of see how we can bring even more like people together to then really learn from each other, because again, if we are not there for each other as indies, who else is? Like that's kind of how it goes in at least in the culture aspect, cross
One of
borders.
the yes, and I completely agree with you, and something that I've been listening from a long time is, and that's true. It's we lack on systematization of knowledge in the games industry.
Yes.
The problem is that if you need to learn something that is crucial for your sustainability, I not even will dare to say success, because success is so fluid and something that depends on what you define as success. But sustainability, uh, you require access some networks to actually accessing this knowledge. And sometimes you do not have these networks, so because this knowledge is not systematized. But the worst problem of the industry is that if you had this systematized knowledge 5 years ago, it will be
Outdated.
absolutely outdated. And it's really hard to have updated uh, systematized knowledge to be accessible by people. And these kind of actions that you said, like create community, it's really important for doing it. But the problem is this knowledge is still unsystematized.
Yeah,
It's still
that's one thing we're doing. Like we are going to have a dedicated forum on our website just for this. Like, and it's going to be just like, and everyone can free. Like there's no payroll. Like it's all there, just being part of the community and forum kind of, and that's all. So creating this library for especially indie developers. But the thing here, what you mentioned also, this sort of stuff that gets so fast outdated. I still maybe it's again researcher in me that I always like, because you have to understand what is the current even market situation, what is this. None of this happened overnight. The thing is that all of this is a result of what happened before historically. So even game design, how we got to make games now for whichever platform, for whichever genre, how things evolved are the part of that evolution. And sure, games industry evolution is incredibly fast. Like it's like, come on, the retro games are even like what, PlayStation 3, like are you kidding me? So it's like these are the things that are really like it's beyond fast kind of to keep up. And that's why systematization is problematic, because it's so fast, and like stuff now it's outdated, you know, even from the few years ago. But knowing that will let you understand, and seeing what's happening now, kind of like getting that and getting into that mindset that, okay, you can't predict really what's next, nobody can, and who says they lie, let's be honest. But the thing is that at least you will be more prepared to whatever, because it's all about pivoting, it's all about figuring out and at the go kind of adjusting with all the aspects, I mean, for the market, but also players, how they behave, how things, like what are the best practices. I mean, just best practices of game design have shifted even in the past few years, not mentioning years behind. So these are the things that kind of like, it's still important that there is that knowledge from the past in order to understand where it's all coming from, because it doesn't come just from someone who woke up and like, oh, now we're gonna do this. No, it's literally so many moving elements and factors that have been shaping it to be where we are now. And definitely systematize, because we were discussing this even as an organization, like, okay, how do we, because there are lots of discords, for example, with a lot of resources and so on. But the problem with discords and this kind of let's say community, kind of like living community resource, without anyone actually putting them somewhere to remain, is so that's where we are building a library, because it through conversation and so on it gets lost, or discords die, or moderators leave because life happens and so on. So lots of these things can, but if we have, so that's why we actually went to old school forum format, because lots of stuff can still be found in the old forums actually, like that still exist, which is wonderful. So kind of thinking that, okay, there's Discord, of course we have Discord, and that's like fine, but that's for this live, like this sort of like what's now, what's gonna, and then from there having something more steady for the communication part, and then the whole library that would be, and all again free of charge, just like, so none of this GDC Vault and whatever else. I just want to, no, just take it. Like the point is, whatever it is that it's valuable for you, like explore it, take it. That's the at least how we approach it from We Love Games. And so that's why we kind of thought that, okay, let's try this then, like to go back to what really worked well actually, from the history of this sort of community stuff, from the forums and so on. But let's see. Again, we just started, like, so we will see.
As you know, I knew that you were doing this stuff, and I actually jumped the ball for you to cross this, because we need, and that's why I'm really proudly connected now with We Love Games community, because we need these kind of initiatives, and there is a kind of zeitgeist now in the industry that we actually need this kind of support institutions happening, organizations, communities, like in January was officially launched the Game Incubation Special Interest Group in IGDA. I am the vice chairperson of the group. Mr. Shosato is the chairman, leading this amazing effort. Wonderful people. And we have like 90 organizations around the world doing game incubation. That is basically say, well, we have a lot of resources, but sometimes we are reinventing the wheel. We kind of discovering things by chance sometimes, and why not to cooperate? Why not to exchange knowledge? Why not to systematize this knowledge somehow? And I think that's why even having a lot of possibilities in the industry, I never went out exactly from the academia, because it's the locus on where you can manage knowledge somehow. So but the problem with academia, and that's the paradoxical part, is, well, we are talking about how fast is the game industry. Thinking on that, a PhD lasts like 4 to 5 years. So when you start a PhD, the industry will be completely different when you your PhD ends. So how to make it happen?
I mean, that is one, definitely. But another thing is also, let's be honest, how slow generally the processes are, which are, by the way, not in the bad way slow. It's they are having their own timeline, so to say. But I mean, generally academic life, but any other, even governmental work, this and that, everyone has their own kind of, but then industry is just like flying by. And this is really like it cannot catch up. So even academics cannot catch up. Like they are, and there are lots of amazing researchers around the world, like constantly publishing all the things, getting all this stuff, like so much resources from so many disciplines, like regarding the game tech. But it's still,
and it's so crazy because and it's so crazy because, well, I'm now, after almost 5 years, I'm going back to the university environment. And there is so much, so many amazing things going on inside the university that cannot bridge the walls of the university to go to the industry, and vice versa. There is a lot of amazing data and information and things going on in the industry that there's actually people being paid to thinking on things inside the university that is not analyzing this information. So somehow we need to fix this bridge, and of course there is I have a lot of critics on the academia, this ivory tower thing of research that is in the top of dozens of books that never reach the society. I have a lot of criticism on this, but in the end of the day, these interactions is something that we kind of like to help to generate evidence, because we have a lot of assumptions based on empiric analytic visualization, but we lack on systematized evidence to sustain our decision making too. When I was talking, like for example, when I talk, of course I will not tell who, but I talk with some scouts from publishers or VCs, and I ask them to say, well, what kind of method do you use to decide who invest? It's make like a my feeling, like
Yep.
of course spreadsheets to see the numbers, but half of the thing it's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gut and feeling.
Yeah, the
And
personal approach. Yeah, and that's because people again work with people, and I know exactly what you mean. I mean, there is also a reason why quite often only circles within, if you are within the circle, certain circles, you have higher chance, and especially if you are male, to get publishing deals. So that's where we have like a lot of this sort of disbalance, of course, because of exactly this sort of like approaches. Because so, and you want to work with someone you trust, you kind of seen how they work, but having more transparency overall, and having more opportunities like this so that people meet, because let's be honest, majority of these events, business events, are extremely expensive for even for the Western developers, like
yeah,
so not mentioning outside of the Western world. And it's of course that's already straight away there, or not mention now visas and other stuff, but that's governmental stuff. But anyway, there's so many blockages, and that's where like finding this way, especially through communities like this, like why we love games conferences hybrid even before COVID, because to open up, and free of charge, that it's open up the doors literally to everyone to be equal. Doesn't matter, are you a CEO of whatever AAA studio, are you just starting, you are here equal. And this is something that we also saw that as very much lacking. So therefore, that's why we do. And yes, no, quite many. That's why this is also non-profit, meaning that we from the industry are giving back, like this sort of like, so we are volunteers, but still, like this is something that is definitely needed more. And yeah, at least
and
effort is there.
I want to dig in one thing that you mentioned, that it's not for profit, it's give back, but we are, well, entering the polemic of the crisis of the games industry that we are
Right.
facing, and reshaping and layoffs and all this kind of things going
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, we are seeing like uh, the indie era thing started to being told, because basically most of some of the most profitable games in the last months or year uh, are actually indie games. If you, it's not a big triple A's or anything. So you see from Manor Lords to Vampire Survivor to even Power Word in a way, or Among Us, and we have a lot of cases of big hits that it's not actually AAA games, and how the games industry are looking for these emerging gaming experiences that only can be born inside the indie game the ecosystem, and how these kind of things is important to renew the industry and create a more sustainable ecosystem from the industry, because the logic of winner takes it all, it's not healthy for even for the triple A's, because it did not generate a healthy industry, and we cannot rely
I mean, we
anymore
see
on the
that
industry.
especially with the state of the industry. Like, so therefore, like,
Yes,
and so many cases in the past years of exactly what you're saying. Like, they are the results why certain approaches don't work. But yeah, the indies are
and
on the like.
and we cannot rely anymore on the industry growing 10% a year, because we have limits on this triple its size. Well, in 2012, the industry was $70 billion. Now it's $200 billion. It's impossible to keep growing this fast in this velocity. But what will make the industry sustainable more and more, and have a vivid base of the pyramid, with where is born the innovation, where is born the new niches, when is born the new ways to explore the gameplay, the symbolic approaches, that uh, the cultural references, or something that I always say, that we have hundreds of games about Vikings, but we have like 2 games about African or South American mythology. So we need more
Speaking of
diversity.
that, the one, like, I have to say this, but I think you will understand, because I have been since basically since Assassin's Creed started. I was always like, why there is no? I have two things that I would like to see: Ottoman Empire, like the stuff of kind of like, because like all that stuff, like it's just like, and then whole Latin America, like Maya, Inca, but it can be other side, like it can be whichever, but it would be from that kind of like region of this sort of like, but because Assassin's Creed franchise is so good in working with meaning the historians and all, like they're really going into authenticity, especially for the kind of cultural representation. Like now Valhalla and Odyssey are being used, and Origins are being used in schools, literally, at least in Europe, to showcase like this sort of like how, like, because it's based on actual like historical research, like, and the experts working with the developers in making it as authentic as possible. So like I'm hoping Ubisoft, like, if they are listening to this, please consider. That would be amazing to have it in Amazonia or whatever. Like, yeah, it would be.
But the thing is, where the studios are located, who are the decision makers?
Of course,
they have.
I know. I know. But that's the thing. Like, and then of course different. With the corporation, we don't have to go there. But I also realized that we have been now for 55 minutes chatting, which I know, which is, I mean,
it was 20 minutes for me.
Exactly, for me it felt like, but then I just saw the clock, like, oh my god, because also, like, I just realized that my husband with our dogs from the forest walk came in, like, oh, what time is it? Oh, so, but
I need to lunch in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but to thank you. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for incredible discussion. I mean, we will continue. We will have sequel and one on this, definitely. And then for the audience, few things that I want to remember. First of all, Pedro, how can people reach out to you? What is the easiest, from social media or whatever? What would be?
I'm most active in LinkedIn.
Okay, so
I think it's the easiest way. So find Pedro Santoro Zambon in LinkedIn and reach me out. I can put the link of my LinkedIn in the chat if you want.
Yeah, you can totally put it in the Discord. So yes, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In the Discord, I'll be there to
Yes.
putting
And
on. Yes.
we will of course make introduction to Pedro if you reach out to any of us and so on, of course. So naturally we will do that. I can actually open up, because we are using I will just open up this and put it in Twitch. There we go.
Yes.
So so that is the easiest way to reach out directly to Pedro. Otherwise, of course, happy to facilitate and make introductions and all that, because Pedro is one of our team members in We Love Games, as well as we are going to do a lot of stuff together, including the research. And yeah, so really wish to thank you for joining us today. It has been immense pleasure as always. And yeah, now one more thing to just say to the jammers before we close today's stream for now is the what you need to do today. Please, jammers, make profile. I already posted that in Discord, but just as a reminder, make sure that today your team, each team member, is actually having a profile page of their own on itch.io, and then decide that one of your team members will be the person to actually make and submit the game, make a page, game page, and submit the game when the time comes, because that person will then add the rest of you to the team members of the game. So that's why you need your profiles on itch.io, so that it's all connected and you can use it, of course, as your reference. And this is also something that we will be using to double check that you have actually worked on the games that you claim in certification, because we will be providing certificates as We Love Games and Finnish Game Jam organizations. And so just like today, do that so you don't have to stress about it. Tomorrow you can just do the final polish and push the game out. So today we recommend that you do this kind of, it takes 5 minutes, but just do it. It's easier if you do it in good time. And yeah, we will continue the rest of discussion in Discord. And once again, thank you for being with us, everyone, and thank you, Pedro, above all. We see
Thank,
on the
thank,
yeah.
thank you. You can see me. I'll be in Discord too. You can reach me out there. And congratulations from the initiative We Love Games and Brazilian Embassy. It's amazing initiative, this Crossing Latitudes Game Jam. I could not be more happy to have this iteration between Brazil and Finland.
It's a pleasure, and we really want to, like, this is something that we actually want to grow even more. So we will do it together naturally. So thank you all, and yeah, enjoy the rest of Back to Jam Jam Jam. See you all.
Bye.
Bye.